Alright, March 2011. This is going to be part 3, but might be broken into 2 parts of the year in books for 2011. And in March, I read 3 books. 1 book and 2 graphic novels. And the first one I read was part 2, or book 2 of Astro City Dark Ages, which, if you remember from February, that is part of this larger universe, is Astro City. It's written by Busiek, illustrated by Brent and the covers are done by Alex Ross, but they work together, Brent Anderson, Alex Ross, and Busiek. It's a very elaborate world, and the character designs, the costumes, and everything are very important, but I think that they, and in the credits they call themselves the city founders or something like that, because it's a really complicated thing, and the architecture of everything and where things are located are very important. So Kurt Busiek's ability to keep track of all this, I mean, just, in terms of the physical locations of everything, is amazing. But then, he's got this really long history of the city of Astro City, and the characters' histories, and how they all interrelate, and it helps that it's very much based on Marvel and DC characters, but they're a variation on those themes. They're not word for word the exact same characters, but they're very influenced by them. So it's just this really elaborate universe he's created. And so part 1 and part 2 is all part of the same story, and it's these characters getting older, and a lot of it is they're trying to come to grips with what happened when they were kids, when they were really enthusiastic about the superheroes of Astro City and really looked up to them. And when their parents die, one of the characters becomes a cop because he feels like both of them have the impression that there are evil people out there and there are superheroes, but you can't really count on superheroes, so you need to do things by yourself. So the brother that becomes the cop is like, well, I'm going to defend Astro City because you can't count on superheroes. The other brother becomes a criminal because he's like, I can only look out for myself. You can't count on anyone at all, and the best you can do is just try and take care of yourself. And a lot of it deals with revenge and just how their characters' attitudes is reflected in a lot of the other people who live in Astro City, and how that affects the superheroes and people's relationships with them. It's a really great series. I won't go into that too much because I talked about it a little bit in the previous video. The next one I read was the Goon Volume 0, Rough Stuff, which is basically a prequel to the events that take place in the Goon Volume 1, which is Heaps of Ruination, where he refers to things that have happened in his previous life, but Volume 0 goes a lot more into what happened in the past when he was he worked for a circus, and his aunt, I think, worked there as a strong woman, and she gets murdered when he's a kid. He takes over this criminal organization from this guy who has killed his aunt, Kizzy, I think. And so it also deals with how he meets Frankie, I think is his name, his sidekick, back when he's a kid, because a lot of when the Goon becomes this powerful character is when he's a kid. It's a really weird, dark, funny, interesting series, and it's written and illustrated by Powell. He also does the covers, he does lettering, It's very much creator-controlled thing, and he lets some other people do some side stories also, but the main mythos, the main canon, is all him. And the closest I can come up to, compared to, is maybe if you took Hellboy and you took something like The Road to Perdition and mashed them together. But, Road to Perdition is very serious. There's nothing comic in it, and it's very much supposed to be based on actual mobsters in the Prohibition era. But, it's that kind of crime, film noir style, but then there's all these goofy, wacky not science fiction-y, but pulpy horror stuff in there. It's a comic. It's a very good series to read, but there's some dark, kind of crass stuff in there too, so it doesn't appeal to all tastes, but I enjoy it. Third one is Wilkie Collins, The Woman in White. Wilkie Collins is the author. The book is The Woman in White, sorry. And my sister and my mom had been telling me I needed to read that for the longest time. They'd read it a long time ago, and they were absolutely right. It's Wilkie Collins, who I was sure was a woman, just both from the name and how he writes, I was sure was a woman, because the male characters in the book are really, some of them are well written, but most of them are not. They're just kind of ineffectual, not very impressive, but the women are great, and it's one of the earliest mystery novels. The Woman in White, I believe, was published in one of Dickens' magazines, originally in sections, and Dickens was, my understanding was, he was really annoyed that Wilkie Collins did this, and it was so ridiculously popular, so that was part of his inspiration for writing Great Expectations. It was like, alright, I can do that, and I can do it better, and you could argue whether or not that's the case. I like Great Expectations, but it's much more gothic than, I would say, The Woman in White. And there's certainly a lot of gothic elements in The Woman in White, but I feel a lot more sympathy with the characters in The Woman in White than I do for Pip or the other characters in Great Expectations. So that is March.